sign language interpreters today. This is Lara, and Kaimai is going to be taking over in about 15-minute bursts. We are going to be taking questions from the floor, so just raise your hand and Lauren will come round with a microphone so that we can hear your question, and then Warwick will also repeat it, just so that it gets onto the recording. This session has been live streamed and will be available on our YouTube channel as well afterwards. So it gives me great pleasure then to introduce Warwick Lamp, our electoral officer. Warwick will actually introduce himself, so I'm not going to take too long to do that, but I'll just say that it's been a pleasure to work with Warwick, and he has been our electoral officer since 2007. Yeah, kia ora. Thanks, Warwick.
Kia ora tātou. Yes, thank you, Coral, and welcome everybody along to Bay Court this evening to hear this presentation, and welcome also to everybody who is here online. So we are being streamed on YouTube, so that means I have to be on my best behaviour. Those of you that know me will know that that's not the easiest of things to do, but it is what it is. So yes, my name is Warwick Lamp. I'm Council's external electoral officer. I've been doing this job for a long, long time. Started doing council elections in 1986. So what is that? Just about 40 years. So in that time I've seen lots of things, dealt with lots of candidates, got a few stories to tell, and I've pretty much seen it all. Also means that I've got a pretty good bullshit radar. Been round the block a bit, dealt with lots of candidates, heard lots of stories. So when you're dealing with me, please make sure that you're straight up, because you're going to get it straight back. Okay? Many of you have heard this presentation before, so apologies if that's the case, but I'll try and keep it as entertaining as I can. Talking about elections sometimes is not the world's most exciting topic, so I will try and keep it a little bit entertaining and keep it as casual as we can. Happy to take questions from the floor, so please just raise your hand or sing out at any point as we go through. I've got 50 odd slides to go through, but I'm going to do most of those pretty quickly, and I'm not going to read every one word by word. We won't be doing death by PowerPoint. So, as I said, my name is Warwick Lamp, and you've heard from Coral, who is Council's Deputy Electoral Officer. And this is who we are. I work for an elections management company based in Christchurch. I was born and bred and come from a small town called Martin. Who's been to Martin before? Well, there you go. Thriving metropolis that it is. Halfway between Palmy and Wanganui. I'm also a Christchurch earthquake refugee. So, been through lots of earthquakes, so if there is one, I'll know what to do. And we do lots of elections. We do a couple hundred elections a year in all sorts of different organisations. Councils are a small part of what we do in non-council election years. And there are all the councils that I'm an electoral officer for. We work for 47 councils in the country at the moment. Recently been appointed as the electoral officer at Western Bay. Of course, we've got a couple of by-elections on there at the same time. Everything's run from our office in Christchurch, but I live in Bethlehem and I've lived in Tauranga since 2012, so I'm just down the road. Okay, what's local government all about? What does it mean to be an elected member? It is a very complex business. Lots of legislation involved and a big, big job. Of course, you know, this is the case where Tauranga is returning to democracy after 3 years of the commissioners. My experience of that is that when there's a return to democracy, when there's a new council coming into being, like the Auckland Council, that there has typically been a really good turnout and lots of interest by candidates. So I do think that we will have a pretty busy election, and there'll be lots of interest, hopefully from you as candidates and also from people who end up voting. The usual return percent is just under 50%. We'd be keen to get that to 60, even more. And I think with this return to democracy, that could well happen. But there are the list of the things that an elected member does as part of their role, all about advocating on behalf of the community, making big decisions for the city. And in big blue writing, it is a big deal. It is not a 5-minute job. So please take that into account when you're making your decision. It is a very big responsibility and it takes a lot of time. You really are there for the eyes and ears of the city. In the Candidate Handbook, and please make sure you read the Candidate Handbook, which is on the council's website. It always surprises me every election when I come to the close of nominations and start talking to candidates and many of them say, "Oh, I haven't read the Candidate Handbook." Please make sure you read the Candidate Handbook before you put your nomination in to find out everything that you need to know for becoming a candidate and for then being an elected member. Any questions about that? I'll say it again. It is a big deal. Those are the things that you do from a big picture perspective. Pretty straightforward. Big responsibility. Only employ one person, Council CE. The council, Marty, then employs the rest of the staff. Coral, how many staff members, FTEs at the moment? 1,100 staff. Big job. Council looks after the performance of the CE only. So, what type of things, skills do you need to have? All those things there. Plenty of public speaking. If you're not experienced in public speaking, once you're elected member, you soon will be. Got to be pretty good at listening. Got to be good at reading. Lots of documents to read. Lots of strategy stuff, lots of thinking. You got to think about things citywide, not just for your ward. And there is a code of conduct as well that the new council will put in place. At the moment, this is the current deal. Council meetings every 3 weeks. A few committees there. The usual deal is that the mayor is a full-time job. Council is 3 to 5 days. Depends. Some councils are different to that, but a big city council like this, 3 to 5 days is probably about right. Lots of meetings. I think from memory, before the commissioners took over, the council meetings, or the meetings that councillors attended, were around about 90 to 100 each year. Lots of reading of weekly agendas and then minutes of meetings. Those agendas each week can be a couple of 100 pages long, a couple of inches thick. Takes quite a bit of time to read. But flexible working hours, also things in the evening, weekends, attending events, going to meetings, going to community meetings, going to council meetings. Flexible working hours. Any questions about that? Once again, this is covered in the Candidate Handbook as well. So please check that out. Okay, what's the remuneration? 172 for the mayor, 84 base for councillors, paid fortnightly. Pretty straightforward. What have we got this time up? Before we get into that, as electoral officer, this is what I do. My job is to conduct the election in accordance with the legislation, Local Electoral Act and local electoral regulations. Pretty prescriptive, not the world's most exciting legislation, timeline driven, deadline driven. But my key job is to make it as level a playing field for everyone. But one thing that I don't do is worry about or get involved in campaigning. As I say down the bottom there, I'm not interested in monitoring campaigning by candidates. I'm not interested in worrying about what you might say about someone else or what someone might say about you. Someone gives you a hard time and slags you off, don't talk to me about it. Usual rules of defamation apply in the campaigning space. Other than that, there really are no rules. Campaigning can start now. This is what it is. I'll talk a bit more about this a bit later on. Okay, here are the key dates in the candidate handbook as well. As you know, nominations have just opened. We've had 2 nominations so far. Those 2 nominations are up on Council's website. As nominations are confirmed when they come in, they go up on Council's webpage at the end of each day. We had 2 on Friday, haven't had any yesterday and today. Usually, everyone leaves it till the last minute. But you're going to get sick of me saying, do not leave lodging your nomination until the last minute. Because if there's something wrong with it, and you don't have time to get it fixed, you won't be a candidate. We'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. So as you see, these are the key dates. Nominations close 24th of May. Signs can go up beginning of June, which under Council's hoardings policy is 6 weeks before election day. That's actually one of the shortest ones in the country. Across all the councils that I do, most councils are 3 months, some 2. Not many of them are 6 weeks, but this is what it is. That's a council decision and Council's hoardings policy. Then voting opens, actually, under the legislation, voting opens on the 28th of June. Friday the 28th of June is what day? Matariki Day. So public holiday. But we are using DX as the postal provider for this election, and DX are intending to start delivering some of the voting papers on that Friday. So there will be some voting papers delivered around the traps. Not too many on a Friday, given it is a public holiday, but they will start that day. Most of them will be the Saturday and then the Monday and the Tuesday. And of course, voting closes Saturday, 20th of July, 12 noon. The rest of it kicks in from there. Okay, so here's the deal. This time around, different landscape from what it has been previously. 1 elected member per ward, plus the mayor. 9 wards, 8 general wards, 1 Māori ward. Quite a change from previous arrangements. First time it's been like this. And candidate names will be in random order on the voting papers, so that means every person's voting paper will be different. Okay? Any questions about that? I'm getting sick of talking. All right, here's what it is. Okay, nomination period, as we know, 4 weeks under legislation. Closes 24th of May, 12 noon, not 12:01, 12 noon. We have to receive your nomination before midday. If someone is bringing it into the council office on the last morning, then the council staff will be there listening to the PIPs on the national program at midday to ensure that it is exactly midday. If you're not in the door of the council office, if you're bringing it in person, if you're not in the door, you're not a candidate. If you are in the door with your nomination documents in your hot little hand, then we will process that even if it takes half an hour or so. All the nomination documents got to be submitted together. Can't submit your nomination paper today and then bring in your profile tomorrow and send us your photo next week. Won't be accepted until the last piece has been provided. In fact, we'll probably send it back to you. So give us everything at the same time and can be done electronically. Last time we had a council by-election, which was 4 years ago, we had 23 candidates and I think 19 of them submitted their nominations electronically. So probably 80% of people will do that, scan, email, no problem, great, we're good with that. Photo, JPEG, all that stuff, send it into nominations at, pretty straightforward. But make sure that all of your documents are provided at the same time. Nomination paper, photo, profile, evidence of New Zealand citizenship, copy of your passport or birth certificate or your citizenship letter that you get, and evidence of your $200 deposit if you've paid it electronically. So you know when you do that, you pay things online, you can get that transaction receipt thingy. Just grab that, either take a photo of it on your screen or turn it into a PDF and send that along with the rest of your nomination documents. The ones that are coming in person, please to He Puna Manawa on Devonport Road. What's the key thing to remember about that? Do not leave lodging your nomination to the last minute. Yes?
What's the word limit on the profile statement?
Yep, I'll come to that soon. What's the word limit on the profile statement? It's 150 words. I've got a section about this, I'll talk about it shortly. So, you do need to say on your nomination paper whether your principal place of residence is in the ward or not. This gets printed at the top of the profile statement, and I'll show you what this looks like shortly. It's not included in the 150 words. It is 150 words, not 151 words. I count them religiously, I triple check it, it's 150 words max. A few more details about that in the next couple of slides. Remember that the nomination document is a public document and anyone can look at it. So the details on your nomination paper will end up in the public domain. What details are required? I'll show you this in the nomination paper shortly, but it's name, address, phone number and email. If you want those details to not be in the public domain, then you do not need to provide them. But I'll show you an example of this shortly. Can use your commonly used name on the voting paper. Doesn't have to be your official name, you know, Edward, Ted. If there's a name that you've been known by in the community for a long time, you can do that. An example I always give here is of many years ago we had Terry Leeming stand for the mayor, Hoary Bob. He had on the voting paper Hoary Bob, because that's what everybody knew him by. You can have the name as long as that is what you are known by in the community. And you can have a party affiliation. Party affiliation is really the wrong word. It's not like a party affiliation in the parliamentary elections. It's a grouping or an affiliation that you want to be known by. Can be a tagline or a slogan. In the past, there's been all sorts of different party affiliations. It's something that you can use to differentiate yourself. Doesn't have to be anything. Can be independent. Can be nothing at all. Whatever it is, it's a max of 38 characters, because that's the space we have on the voting paper to be able to print it. Here's an example of what the voting paper looks like this time around. Changed from previous elections, where there are now Te Reo instructions on the front page as well, which means it's going to be an A4 voting paper, English and Te Reo instructions on the front page, which means that both the mayor and the ward elections are on the reverse together, which makes it a bit easier for people following it. You haven't got one on one side and one on the other side. Next to each other, mayor on the left, ward on the right. STV, ranking candidates, follow the instructions there. Candidate names are listed randomly. That's pretty much what it's going to look like. Any questions? Yeah.
Why are we numbering preferences if you're only voting for one person to be the ward councillor?
Because council has chosen to use STV, single transferable vote. It is what it is. Ranking candidates, we have lots of councils that use STV. It's just a different method of voting. It is what it is. You're ranking candidates in the order of your preference.
What happens if you only vote for one person?
Yep. If you only vote for one person, then you only vote for one person. Your number one goes to that person. If there's 10 candidates, say, and that person comes last, then that person drops off and the votes get transferred to the next preference. As there is no other preference, then your vote doesn't go to help anyone else get elected. So your first preference goes to one person who misses out. That's the end of that process. If you'd ranked other candidates, then your vote gets passed to those other candidates who are still in the race. That's the nature of STV. Happy to have a chat about this afterwards, if you want to talk about it any further. Okay, here's the nomination paper. On the left there, the front side, with all the bits and pieces there. Up the top you'll see, if I can get my pointy thingy to go, resident in or not within the area of which you are standing. You can stand anywhere, you can live anywhere. You can live in Auckland, stand in Tauranga. You can live in Papamoa and stand in Bethlehem. Doesn't matter. You just have to say on the nomination paper, which then goes in your profile, that you live outside the area. It's just that your nominator and seconder must live in the area for which you are standing. And here are all of the contact details, which you can put in there if you want to, remembering that they do go in the public domain. If you don't want that to happen, then the top up here are details that you can give to me so that I can contact you, because I want to contact you as to give you the results and talk about things. But remember, these details here are in the public domain. Candidate contact list goes up on Council's website once nominations have closed. And if you look on the Council website now, you'll see for the two candidates that their contact details are already there. Yeah, Murray.
If I struggle to get somebody to nominate me, can I nominate myself?
No, you cannot nominate yourself. Can be a family member, can be someone at the same address, just has to be two people that live in the ward if you're standing for the ward, or live in the city if you're standing for mayor. Yeah.
What if they're enrolled in a different area?
If they're enrolled in a different,
They live in Greaton, but they live in, they're enrolled in Greaton, but they live in Buckbay.
it's whatever the address is that is on the electoral roll, and we will check that. If the address that the person, the nominator, puts on the nomination paper is different to what is on the electoral roll, then we will want you to change that. So find two people that live in your ward, which is why it's important that you do not leave lodging your nomination until the last minute. Because as I said before, if you do, and your nominator is not in the ward, and you haven't got time to get it fixed, by midday, you're not a candidate. Yeah.
What's your turnaround for checking the nomination? Like, we wait 1 or 2 days, moving through that it's all up and handed?
Much less than that. If you brought it in person, we would check it straight away. If you send it in electronically, that's getting cleared all the time. Coral, Robin, 30 minutes?
Unless there's something that needs further checking, like if an address is incorrect, we have to check with the elected person, further check the needs, but generally it'll be a fairly quick turnaround.
Very quick turnaround. But remember, usual deal, do not leave it till the last minute. A lot of people do. We could well get 20, 30, 40 nominations in the last 2 days. The pressure is on then for us to check those nominations as quick as possible. And that, can make things pretty tricky, particularly if some of the details aren't correct. So that's why I don't want you to leave it till the last minute. Yeah.
So that form there covers the ward and the mayor nomination.
Yes, the two separate forms. Yeah. So that one is it's the mayor form up there. The ward one is essentially the same, slightly different, just with tick box at the top to tick which ward you're standing in. They're in the documents at the back there. Here's the back part of the nomination paper where it talks about the council's bank account details, where you're to pay your deposit to, and what to put in the reference fields. So please make sure you read the nomination form carefully, and you read the candidate handbook well before you complete your nomination paper, so that you've got all that stuff bang on.
Or can you just show where you sort of be indicated for standing for the action?
Where am I going? Up here?
So that indicates that you need to indicate that you're standing for.
Oh yeah, sorry. If you're standing for another election, whereabouts is that? Is that down there somewhere? So if you're standing in more than one election, which you can stand for mayor and the ward, but not two different wards. So you can stand for both, mayor and the ward. On each form, you need to tick that box and say that you're standing for the other position, because that gets printed at the top of your candidate profile statement that goes in the profile book. So same as my principal place of residence is within the ward, I'm standing for such and such. If you put in your nomination paper tomorrow for the ward and then decide in 2 weeks' time you're going to put one in for the mayor, you've got to make sure that when you bring in your mayoral one, that you have on it that you're standing for the ward, and you've got to make sure that you talk to Coral and Robin about getting your original nomination paper and adding onto that you're standing for the mayor. But we will be on to that anyway.
Sorry, in your candidate photo, you're asking to submit a colour photo.
Yep.
You didn't give the size of it. Does that not matter if it's doing electronic? Or if it's submitted by hand, you need to set the size?
Good question. Doesn't really matter, because we crop it, we size it to the right size, which is 308 pixels by 472 you don't need to know about that. We just want a JPEG, a colour JPEG, if you're doing it electronically, not a PDF, a JPEG, or a TIFF, a photo format that we can then put into the right size. If it's been scanned off a hard copy, then we'll deal with that and make sure we get that right anyway. So it doesn't matter about the size, we'll sort that out.
On the voting paper that they give, is it in colour or black and white?
Colour photos. In the profile book, colour photos. I'll show you this shortly. So if you do provide a black and white photo, bear in mind we've had colour photos for 3 rounds of elections. Hardly anybody does provide a black and white one. It'll look different. Colour's colour. Always recommend colour. Remember, you got to be a New Zealand citizen. Can't be a permanent resident. Got to be on the roll. Can't be serving a prison sentence. Can't be a regional councillor. If a current regional councillor wishes to stand, then they have to resign before they put in their nomination for the city. Can't have an interest in a contract with the council for more than $25,000 a year. This is an old piece of legislation. That number is a tad on the low side, but it is what it is. If you are in the situation where you have a contract with council for more than 25k, then you can get an exemption from the audit office. No, Office of the Auditor General, one of those, audit office. The details of that are in the Canada handbook. You have to get that before you put in your nomination. You cannot do it retrospectively. It has to be sorted before you are a candidate. And you can't stand for more than one ward. But as I said before, can stand for mayor and council. Can stand for the Māori ward if you're on the general roll, and vice versa. If you're standing for the Māori ward, you just got to have nominated and seconded on the Māori electoral roll. If you are a council employee, you must resign if you are elected as a mayor or councillor. This does bring up the issue of potential conflicts of interest. This can be a bit of a tricky situation, but it depends on each individual case. For example, if a council employee is standing for council, then depending on their position, there may be a case where they take leave of absence for 3 months for the election period. Example I'll give is Waipā District Council is a council that I'm an electoral officer for, and many moons ago, council's regulatory and planning manager decided to stand for mayor. So he was council's, on the second tier manager. He took leave of absence from his position for the election period, did his campaigning, got elected as mayor, resigned, went in as mayor. At the same time, his wife was the CE's EA. So, the regulatory manager's wife was the council's CE's EA. When he was the mayor, she was still the CE's EA. Potential conflict there. So my advice to her was, as the EA, during the voting period, not to be in the council office around that time so that other staff members didn't feel uncomfortable when they were voting for the mayor or not. So it just depends on the person's position in the council as to what happens with that situation, and we discuss it with the council staff, with the manager, and we go from there. The same for potential candidates who might be on council's working groups or community committees. If there is a potential conflict, then it may be appropriate for that relationship not to continue while the person is a candidate. Depends on each situation. Each situation is different. Depends on the working group or the committee and what information is involved in that relationship. Bearing in mind, it's all about being a level playing field for everyone as much as possible. Yeah.
Have you got examples where
You mean once they've been elected, you mean?
Yeah.
Maybe, but during the election period, it's all about a level playing field, and it depends on what the nature of that contract is and what the relationship is as to how that is managed. Key thing there is, for me as the electoral officer, to be aware of it, and then I can provide the appropriate advice at the time. Okay? If anybody's got any questions about that, then just come and see me about it afterwards. Murray?
Just on the conflict one, Warwick,
Yep.
I've listened to what you've said there. It intrigues me that you don't give the same advice to an existing and standing councillor. You want to create an even playing field. It's generally accepted that the existing councillor, who's going to nominate for the next election, has got an advantage insofar as perhaps profile is concerned. The existing councillor continues to have a relationship with staff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious
Yep.
why it is okay for a councillor to maintain his council duties,
Yep.
including staff interaction,
Sure.
and yet if I decide to be on a save the mangrove committee or something, that is somehow rather seen as a conflict.
Sort of, but not really. Remembering though, in this case, there are no existing councillors, so it's not an issue this time around. But in a normal council election scenario, there are elected member protocols that we have in place with all of our elected members that talk about this precise issue. You're right, as an elected member, you do have BAU activities that continue as a councillor, but you need to be cognizant of those relationships, the information that you provide as a councillor, and how that might be used or not used, and whether that is a level playing field for everyone. So yes, those protocols cover that off, and I do spend quite a lot of time giving advice to elected members about that stuff in the lead up to an election. Can you withdraw? Not really. You can withdraw up until the close of nominations. After the close of nominations, good luck. You can withdraw, same rules as a parliamentary election, if you can provide me with a medical certificate to say that you would be incapable of carrying out the job of elected member if you were elected. Doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. I've had someone, for example, who's had a stroke a couple of days after nominations closed and wasn't well enough to continue, provided me with a medical certificate, withdrew them as a candidate. But doesn't happen very often. Same rules as what happens in Parliament. Yeah, John.
You can't withdraw in the sense that your name stays in the book, your profile stays in the book.
Yes.
So if you put the full page there, the back,
Yes.
fine, so my name's in the book, but I'd rather Matheson be there than me.
Yeah, good point. So John's question was, you can't legally withdraw, but you can unofficially withdraw and put some adverts out there to say, don't vote for me. There was the case at the last council election where I think there was a lady in Wakatani, might have been 2019, who was on the regional council, a staff member, stood for the Wakatani District Council for a community board. But when she completed her nomination paper, inadvertently completed the wrong one and stood for the ward instead of the community board. Didn't want to be a ward councillor, so did a do not vote for me campaign, exactly as John has suggested. Got out there, did a whole lot of advertising saying, please don't vote for me. I had a couple of candidates last time down the country who did the same thing. Did a whole lot of stuff, please don't vote for me. None of them got elected, but you run the risk of getting elected. So, please think carefully about putting it in, because withdrawing is not really an option. Okay, candidate profile statements. Talked a bit about this before. Max 150 words, not 151. If you put in your profile and it's 151, 152, 153, so forth, I'll look at that, and if I can make a few changes to squeak it into 150, like combining a I have to an I've, or an I am to an I'm, or Tauranga City Council to a CCC, or putting a hyphen in something, I'll do that to get it to 150 words and let you know. But if it's 160 words, or I'm unable to do that, then I'll be sending it back to you saying, can you please change this, and quickly, because time is upon us to get those voting documents signed off as soon as we can. After closed nominations, we don't have a lot of time. We want to get that sorted out ASAP. So please make sure that it's 150 words max, not 160. John?
Or do you accept Microsoft Word's word count as a valid number?
Yes, but there are some fishhooks with that, and it depends, and I'll triple check it anyway and let you know if for some reason it isn't. Remember, no bullet points, no Word, I think, counts a bullet as a, Microsoft Word counts a bullet as a word, which isn't helpful. But no bullet points, no speech quotation marks, no italics, no fancy formatting. Keep it simple. You can have paragraphs. It's 150 words about what you're standing for, your policies, not about another candidate, not about the council and things they're doing wrong. We do fact check it. So if you put something in your profile that talked about, you know, a council project for XX million dollars, I'll check that to make sure that it is in fact factually correct. But I won't be worried about politics and campaigning and opinions. It's not my job to investigate anything you put in your profile. If you tell porkies about your qualifications or where you've been or what degrees you've got, that's on you, not on me. I won't care. Profiles in the photo will go up on Council's website as soon as they are signed off after nominations have closed, which will be probably a week after the closed nominations, probably the end of the first week in June. So it takes us a while to collate everyone, get them signed off and get them off to the printer. Once they're signed off and approved, we'll pop them up on Council's website. Photos, profiles. End of the first week in June. As we said before, colour photos within the last 12 months. Not one from the last time you stood as a councillor. Not one from 6 years ago. Not one from a famous Bay of Plenty regional councillor who's used the same photo for 12 years in a row. Within the last 12 months, head and shoulders shot only. No hats, no sunglasses, no dogs, no cats, no birds, no other people. Nothing fancy. No walking sticks. No, nothing. Correct. 300 DPI minimum, please. The more the better. If you rip a photo off your Facebook page and send it to me at 72 DPI, it'll pixelate and you'll look like a fuzzy bear. You won't want that, nor will I. I'll send it back to you. So please take your time to get a good quality photo. Any questions about that? Here's a good example. Very flash. So that's the format that it'll look like. First name, surname in caps, and my wondrous party affiliation, proven, dedicated and real. Sounds like me. My principal place of residence is in the Invercargill city area, and I'm also standing for councillor at large. So if I was standing for two. Then the profile starts from the words, I want you to be involved. 150 words from that point. So all of that stuff above that, not part of the 150 words. Affiliation is not, residence is not, elections you're standing for is not. Okay? Got that? Printed 2 up in a profile book, DLE size, that goes in a normal envelope. How many candidates might we have? Hard to say. Could be 10 in each ward, 20 for the mayor. What's that? 100? We'll have a profile book per ward for the mayoral candidates and the candidates in that ward. So 9 booklets. Campaigning, my favourite topic. Not. As I said before, pretty much no rules, can start whenever you like. You could have been campaigning a year ago if you wanted to. Common sense stuff here. No campaigning in council premises. Can't put up billboards on council's building. Can't turn up to a council meeting waving your vote for me sign. You do have to record all of your campaign expenses, which I'll talk a bit about in a minute. And remember that any campaign material, every piece of campaign material, digital or otherwise, has to have your authorisation on it to say that you've authorised that particular piece of campaign material. Authorised by your name, contact details. Doesn't have to be your address. Used to be, you had to have your address on it. Doesn't anymore. You can put web address, you can put email, you can put phone number. You don't have to put your private details. Yeah. So if you're doing a social media post from your Facebook or something, as long as your Facebook page has the authorisation on it, that's okay. Every single little post doesn't need the authorisation as long as it can be linked back to you where the authorisation is somewhere. Yeah. Is that part of your campaign material? No. So it doesn't need to be authorised. It's the reason for the authorisation is to show that that is part of your campaign material for which you have to account the cost of. If it's not your campaign material, if third party or someone else does it, that's okay. Anyone can do that. If it's part of your campaign, because you've got to record that, which I'll come to shortly. Remember, any of your ads are subject to Advertising Standards Authority guidelines. If you say some porkies that people believe are incorrect and make a complaint, they have a process to deal with that pretty quickly, and they will come back to you and get you to change it if it breaches their guidelines. So be careful about that. But as I said before, the usual rules of defamation apply. I don't want to know if someone calls you a nasty name. But if you think you've been defamed, take legal advice as you normally would. Social media. Always a bit tricky, social media. It's probably what I get the most questions about. Remember that council's social media platform cannot be used for campaigning. So as a candidate, if you were posting things on council's social media channels, that'll be zapped, because you can't use that platform to access council's audience, which is not your audience, for campaigning purposes. It's the council's audience, not a candidate's. You can, however, take a council post and forward it to your big wide world. It's okay. You just can't go back the other way. Questions? Yep, sorry.
Are we allowed to set up like our own social media accounts for campaigning?
Absolutely. That does remind me of the infamous story a few years ago where someone did exactly that and then did a good job of spoofing a whole lot of other candidates. A candidate created a number of social media profiles as if it was other candidates and said outrageous things on them, and then set up a fake Tauranga City Council elections page and made a whole lot of strange statements about me as the electoral officer and the council. Not illegal. We got a lot of advice at the time, checked it out, and it's not illegal. Dodgy, sure. Did it pass the front page test? No. What do I mean by the front page test? Did it appear on a story on the Bay of Plenty Times? Sure. But it's not illegal. Maybe. I'm not up to speed on that. I know that with Facebook, you can't. You have to register as a politician to be able to do Facebook advertising. But maybe. Yeah. Yeah. So that comment was that you can complain to the media organisation about that, and they may do something about it. They may do. Okay, bit messy this stuff, but if you're unsure, just ask. So those are things that we don't want you to do in the social media world. No rating or reviewing council's pages, no tagging council's pages, because you're then using council's audience for your campaigning purposes. And it is against the legislation to post a photo of your completed voting paper on Facebook. This did happen, 2019. I had to put a notice out to everyone saying, please do not. It's against the legislation. Any social media. Any social media. Any questions about that? Bit of a minefield, this stuff, but common sense generally applies. Signs, my other best topic. I always get complaints about signs, particularly that someone hasn't got an authorisation on it. So my job then is to let the candidate know that they haven't got an authorisation on it and tell them to get it fixed. But I'm not going to spend all year running around the town checking people's signs and chasing people up, because I've got far more important things to do. But at the end of the day, it's a legal requirement to have an authorisation on every piece of campaign material, including a sign. On the front of a sign, not the back of it. Doesn't say how big or small it can be. It can be pretty tiny. It just has to be big enough that when I stop in front of the sign and get out of my car and have a look, I can see it somewhere. It can be down the bottom, it can be up to the side, can be a little sticky label in the corner, sticky label size. That's okay, just has to be there on the front. Remember, the cost of your signs you have to record in your candidate expenditure, but strangely, the cost of the wood that holds up your sign is not an election expense. I don't know why, but it is. It isn't. Any complaints about the size, location and all of that will go to Council's Enforcement Agency. There is a lot of stuff in the handbook about this, including the areas that are designated where you can put your signs, one candidate sign per area. The council staff are pretty good about this. They go out just before signs go up on the, what was the date again? I can't remember, 6 weeks out, and put lines, with a spray can on the ground in the areas to show you where the signs will go. Murray.
In regards signage, some candidates would have in their garage signs from previous
Sure.
elections.
Yep.
How do they handle that from an expense perspective?
Yeah, good question. So if you're using a sign from 6 years ago, and you recorded that as the expenditure 6 years ago, and you're recycling it, then you just put on your expense return, used sign from 2019, no cost. If you had a little stripe put across it to update it or something, sure, the cost of that is included. But if you've already recorded it before, no problem. Donations and expenses, once again, a bit of a minefield. Don't hesitate to ask, can get pretty tricky. You do have to record the donations that you receive because you've got to put it on your expense and donations report. That gets submitted to the council. It's not checked. I don't look at it. I'm not interested in it. I just take those expense returns and the council put them up on the council's website for 7 years. Legal requirement to be on council's website for 7 years. The media do look at these things to see how much money people have spent. Some people do analysis of it to see what all the expenditure is. So make sure that you record it correctly. It is your return. It is your document. You need to make sure that it's correct. If it isn't, and someone complains to me about it, I'll come back to you and say, I've had a complaint. This is what it's about. If you don't amend it or provide a satisfactory answer, and I believe that there is an issue there, then I will report that to the police, and the police will investigate. My role in that case is to take a complaint and pass it to the police if I think it's valid. Donations, you've got to record your donations, even if you received it a year ago. If it's for your campaign, you have to record it. All sorts of rules around anonymous donations. Remember, a donation is not anonymous if you know who it is from or you could reasonably work it out. So could anybody give me an example as to how you could receive a donation these days that you didn't know who it was from? Pretty hard to do. Through a bank account, you can track it. Maybe if you get an envelope in your letterbox, dropped off in the middle of the night by someone wearing a dark coat that you don't see, that has for your campaign in it, perhaps, but good luck with that. Number of small donations made into a big donation are a number of small donations. Maybe, you just have to declare that. Remember that crowdfunding services do not meet the legislation for candidate donations because they don't record who it's from. And they've advised us that they don't meet those requirements. But down the bottom there, volunteer labour, goods and services free of charge, and money provided by yourself are not donations.
And just last question, the space between 300 to 1500, is that discretionary in terms of whether it's that there or not?
Yep. Shades of grey, this stuff. My advice to you is, my advice to candidates is record everything, because if you don't, you'll get a complaint and might come back and bite you on the butt. Just be transparent. What can you spend? It's in the legislation. It's based on population. There's a table in the Canada Handbook that sets this out. You might ask, why is the Papamoa ward different? Because the Papamoa ward has a population that is just over 20,000. All the rest are between 10 and 20. Except for the Māori ward, which is slightly less, albeit across the whole city. But it is what it is in the legislation. But if you're standing for the mayor and the ward, just the higher limit applies, not 60,000 plus 20,000. And the period for which you have to record it is the 3 months of the election period. So we're already into that now. And you've got to send us a return by the 18th of September or thereabouts. We'll send you the form, we'll give you the details of this at the time, and then we'll chase you up if you haven't done it. If you don't send it back, you don't get your $200 deposit back. As I said, council's website, 7 years. Few offences to be concerned about. Can't use an imitation voting paper in your campaigning material. I'll show you what this looks like in a sec. Bribery and treating. You can't provide food and alcohol and drinks as an inducement for people to vote for you. Nor can you give away a pen, notepad, fridge magnet, or something that is an item of value, even if it was $1. I often get people ring me up saying, you know, so-and-so's advert is undue influence. What is undue influence? Under the legislation, undue influence is if someone is standing over you as you have your pen poised to put it on the voting paper, telling you who you should mark as their preference. That is the case of undue influence in the act of voting. Any complaint about that stuff, I just pass it to the police and they will deal with it. Okay, there's an example of a good sign and a not so good sign. You can put a 1 next to your name, no problem. But you can't put a sign up with other candidates' names and ranks next to them. It's been done before. Please don't do it. Off to the police, head of prosecution. And there you see the authorisation there down the bottom. But it can obviously be much smaller than that. Here's an example of a couple of interesting things. Anybody know where this is? Michael Fayan, Mayor of Horowhenua District Council, 3 years ago, stood again, had his car sign written. It's okay, no problem with that, except it's parked right outside the council building, in the council car park. So I got him to move it. He was pretty grumpy, but you can't have your sign written car on a council premise during the campaign period. Here's where people can pop their votes back. Bit of a change this time around where we've got lots of orange bins. Tauranga didn't have an election last time, so you weren't up to speed on this, but lots of councils have started using orange ballot bins spread around the community that we are currently working on at the moment. Coral, what are we up to? 25 locations? Around the city we've got orange bins. They will be placed during the voting period at many locations where people will go and do their normal everyday business. I like to say, Coral and I like to say, in every supermarket. 4 Squares, supermarkets, council premise, Baywave, Bay Park, Toyo Homai, lots of places on council's website, and a flyer in with the voter pack listing those places where they are. Orange bins, like the one there, basically the same as your bin at home, same size, 120 litre, secured with a padlock at the top and a chain around an appropriate pole or whatever it might be, under CCTV. Secure and cleared every day. So we are keen for you to use these better than the postal system, and it will be keen for you as candidates to promote everyone to get out there and use these orange bins. We get the votes back much quicker. It's much cheaper than going through the postal system, and it's easy for people to drop them off here, there and everywhere. Yeah.
Is there a list of locations?
Yes, absolutely. There's a list of locations. It hasn't been published yet, but it will be closer to the time. There'll be a big comms campaign about this. It'll be a big deal. We'll have it everywhere, including, as I said, a flyer in the voter pack. Council's website. They'll be branded with this type of branding on the front. You won't be able to miss them. The electoral roll, just a couple of boring slides near the end. Yes, there's an electoral roll we use. A prelim roll is out there now, which we use to check to make sure that your nominators and seconders are on the roll. You can get a copy of that, hard copy only. We're not allowed to provide it electronically. It's against the legislation. And that's the cost for doing it. So sing out if you want one. You have to fill in a form to say it's only going to be used for electioneering purposes. Special votes available for people who have lost or destroyed their voting papers during the voting period. We'll worry about this a bit later, but available at 5 different locations around the city this time. Jen?
On the previous slide, just on the ratepayer role.
Yep.
So does every ratepayer in Tauranga get a vote?
Yeah, good question. No. So the ratepayer roll is for those people who are non-resident. So if you live outside Tauranga but own a property in Tauranga City, then you can, after completing the appropriate form, go on the ratepayer electoral roll and get a voting paper.
And so how do they do that?
There's a form on the council's website to do that. It's pretty straightforward. There is a portal on our website for people to go to. It's easy, just go to the council website and check it out. The numbers of people that do that are very, very low. So because there are a few hoops to jump through. But yes, if you live outside the area, own a property inside. Yeah.
How up to date is electoral? So somebody who's not electoral now signs up tomorrow, will you get their information?
Yep. So the electoral roll closes the same day nominations close, 24th of May. So up until that point, you can enrol, and you can enrol online these days on your phone, provided you're enrolled by 4 p.m. on that day, then you'll be in the final roll to get your voting papers. If it's after that day, then that's when you have to do a special vote. However, as candidates, you can't collect special voting documents for your friends, funnily enough. Then when it comes to the results, yep, sorry.
Sorry, can you just go back to the previous slide?
Yep.
So is there no voting at the other libraries, or the Mount Library's not on there? Is it just going to be those facilities for the special voting?
That's right. Coral, that's right. Yep.
And can I ask one more question? Sorry, do you have a sense for how many people are not enrolled over the total turnout?
The electoral commissions say that it's 95%-ish. So that there are a few people that aren't enrolled.
And you said earlier it's 50% was the voter turnout in the last.
That's right.
There's no data about.
40, sorry, 40.
There's no data because the wards have been split. There's no data by ward of what the voter turnout was for each ward.
That's right. And good question. And even in that case, In the electoral roll, we don't get any information around age or demographics, so we can't do any analysis on age-related or ethnicity or gender as to what the voting is.
Is there information available to candidates around Tauranga City Council's promotion of the election or encouraging those people to increase voter turnout, what their plans are around that? Or is it up to the candidates to bring forward and increase the voter turnout?
No, council has a comms campaign that will roll out when it comes to the voting time. That will be extensive to encourage as many people to vote as possible. Just the same as at the moment there is a stand campaign, which you've probably seen on backs of buses or around the place. So yes, that will happen, and we can make that publicly available as well. There's no it's no drama. So, 12 o'clock on the day, voting closes. Bearing in mind all the voting papers are processed at our office in Christchurch, so the ones that are deposited in the orange bins on the Saturday morning won't be included in that because we haven't got them yet, but we'll hit the button and produce the result of those that we have, which will be everything up to including the Friday night, and produce that result and tell the world about 3 o'clock on the Saturday. And then once we've received all the votes from the orange bins, later on in the day we'll process those and produce the preliminary result on the Sunday. And then eventually the final result once the specials have been determined by the Electoral Commission. So the final result likely to be Thursday the 25th of July, all things being equal. When it comes to the results on the day, we'll provide them to the council, and Coral and her team will have a process for ringing everyone and letting everybody know. But we'll tell you more about that when we get a bit closer to the time. Once nominations do close, I have a process where I will email all candidates and give them some updates during that period from the close of nominations to the close of voting. I'll inform everybody what's happening and with 4 or 5 different emails, which is why I want your email address in your nomination documents. And then eventually you'll have the council's inaugural meeting, which is set down for the 2nd of August. Quite a big deal, that meeting. Pretty formal. Friends and family can come along. With a return to democracy, I guess it'll be quite a big deal. The media will be across it. All part of the deal. Mary?
Is there a copy in here of what it is that the elected members will actually be swearing to?
You mean the oath of allegiance? No. Maybe. Yes?
It's been a
No?
recent question I've been asked, a couple of times just recently, in regards to the oath and what format it takes, who determines what the oath is.
That's outside my
Your brief.
brief, so I can't comment on that.
The oath is specified in the regulations, but it's specified in the legislation what the oath is.
So it's covered in the legislation.
So I can find it somewhere.
It's in the booklet,
Oh, it is in the book. Oh, okay.
but it isn't in council, it is specified in the legislation.
Thanks.
Every council does the same thing pretty much. Okay. There's all the documents that you can grab if you want to find out anything else. Council's pre-election report, which will be ready around about the 10th of May, possibly a week before that. Is that right, Coral? Hopefully sooner. That talks about the grand plan, what's happening, where things are at. Pass. Well spotted. The legal date's the 10th of May, right? Yeah. Key thing there though is read the candidate handbook, because I want you to make sure that you do not leave lodging your nomination till the last minute. Okay, last slide. Woo. No online voting, unfortunately. Councils are not permitted to do online voting yet. We do it for every other organisation, every other election we do, just not council elections. One day, as I said, campaigning, pretty much anything goes. That's when election results are going to happen. Council's website. Remember, check it now. Names of candidates are up there as they are approved. Once your nomination is approved, we send an email to you confirming that and providing a copy of what your profile and photo will look like. So, get your nominations in early and we'll all be good to go. That's it from me. Good luck.
Just an online question, if you can.
Yep.
They've asked, what about VSM boards for signs that like traffic management people use, can we use those?
Can you say that again?
VSM boards, you know, for traffic management, like electric signs.
Oh yeah.
Can you use those for that?
Those also you can see on the slide of the road. That,
The traffic management, what do you call it? VSM boards. Never heard of them, but I would think not. That would be up to the Waka Katahis, or I'm sure they'll say no.
you can get them from the high centres.
Can you?
Yes.
Yeah, it has to comply with council's hoardings policy.
They come in you can get 600.
Well, I'm not sure about them. We'd have to look into that, because it may be, you know, it could be a traffic hazard. There'll be issues around locations of those. Not sure. We'll look into that. So, any other questions before we scoot? Yeah.
I just noticed in the candidate book that the signs don't have to come down to Sunday.
Yep.
After the
Yep.
voting is closed.
Yep.
You know, general elections, they normally do that before the Friday, so
Yep.
definitely the Sunday after the election.
Correct. The reason for that is that the local election act is different to the parliamentary elections. Yes, their rules are that signs have to come down the day before because it's polling booth voting. Postal voting, it does not. They can come down after voting is closed. Different deal, different rules. John? Yep.
Can this presentation be placed on the council
Yes.
site?
Yes. And it's available on YouTube as well, and I think this presentation will be up on council's website as well, Carol? Yeah. Sure. All right, if there's no other questions, we'll wrap it up. If you want to come and have a chat to me afterwards about anything, please do. Thank you for coming along. Carol, do you want to close with karaoke?
I'll close with a karakia. Ka whakahaeria ti tapu, kia wātia ai te ara, ki turuki, whakataha ai, ki turuki, whakataha ai, humie, huie, taekie. Thank you. Thank you, Warwick. Thank you.